Yeah. Yes, they have. They have been through a lot, those people of color. What's that? I don't know. Not entirely, but largely, right? And that's one of the issues, right? Is we on our list here is race. The death penalty is disproportionately applied to people of color, um, disproportionately, like hugely disproportionately. And a lot of that has to do with racism. A lot of it has to do with poverty, because the ability to defend oneself isn't there. And so attorney equality is on the list because people who can't afford attorneys don't always get good ones. In fact, rarely get good ones. And so we find ourselves not only in a position of possibly executing innocent people, but even sometimes executing people who deserve some kind of something, but maybe not the death penalty, but are put there because their lawyers just aren't good enough to keep them from that. Right? That doesn't seem right. Sure, there's always political. There's all sorts of, particularly in the South, all sorts of stories of people who have been put in death row for politics because somebody was running for something and they needed to look like they were tough on crime. Yeah, that's Tony. Yep. Oh, this is sort of a different question. This is kind of going back to the botched execution issue that Christine brought up. Should there be physicians there to maintain the health of the person who's dying, right? To make sure that the execution is done right? Because there's also a question about, well, the question is more about doctors take the Hippocratic Oath, right? And part of the Hippocratic Oath is to do no harm. And so can a doctor like morally say, I'm not going to hurt people and I'm going to perform executions? Well, that's his job. Abortions? Doctor? Good point. There's all sorts of, there's all sorts of connections between these two things, right? It seems really hard to argue that you are pro-life for fetuses and also simultaneously in favor of murdering. What's that? A grown-up child? Is that what you said? Sure, yes. We're all just grown-up children. Benjamin Button. And so, right, again, we're talking a lot about sort of consequences and practicalities, and there's always this discussion about the cost of death, right? In fact, it's actually cheaper to keep a person in prison for life than it is to execute them. It actually uses less tax dollars. It's cheaper to keep a person alive for the rest of their life than it is to execute them.
So how much does it cost?
It might say on here. Yeah. Because a lot of the cost is because if you're going to execute somebody, our system allows them to have many appeals before the execution process, which extends the legal battle for years and years and years and years and years, which involves all sorts of attorneys' fees and judges and the juries and all that, which ends up costing way more than putting someone just in prison. Well, and one could argue that a lot of the stuff we're talking about shouldn't really matter, right? Again, we're talking about consequences, but isn't just killing people wrong, right? That's what some people are going to say. This idea of whether or not they're bad people or good people, killing people seems to be a problem. It's Tony. I feel like I'm just preaching to the choir because the two people who voted for death penalty are doing other stuff. So I don't know how they feel about this. I know we're reaching the end of things. Miss Tony, what are you going to say? Take a shot.
So these laws are really old, like you said. So when is somebody going to change these?
As soon as everybody agrees with us, right? I mean, which is probably never going to happen.
Right? But doesn't somebody ultimately make a decision?
Well, that's when you stop taking philosophy classes and you start taking political science classes. Because that's how things actually get done. Okay, fair enough. So it is worth noting, and that's part of the problem, right? Part of the problem is that we generally don't like to think about these sorts of things because they're complicated and they cause stress. And like, oh, I don't know what to think, and I'm gonna have to sit down and think about it really hard. And I don't want to do that. I want to watch, America's Got Talent, eat some lasagna, and then have a beer, and then go to sleep. They are. These are important things, and we could there's lists, and these are just two. We could spend hours and hours and hours talking about all sorts of things. In fact, I actually thought about when I was putting this class together, like, why bother talking about all this stuff? Let's just spend hours and hours and hours doing what we just did tonight, which would be really fun. Maybe it'd be fun for me. Might not be as much fun for you. Yeah, way less grading for me. But I think that you need this first, right? I hope that you need this. I hope that you're using this stuff that we talked about, all these different sort of ways of approaching the problem. I hope so, right? And I hope that as you go forward out of this classroom, you use them more than you continue to use them, right? Because we all have gut feelings. Remember back, I didn't show that video in this class. I probably should have. There's the story about I think I told the story though, about the ham, the lady who always cut an inch off of her ham before she baked it, right? And she doesn't know why, and she asks her mom, and her mom says, I don't know, it's why your grandmother did. And then she asks her grandmother, like, why do you always cut the ham, an inch off of the ham before you bake it? And the grandmother says, because that's the only way it would fit in my oven, right? And so, right, we have these traditions and beliefs and theories about the world that we got from parents or society or whatever, but that actually don't make any sense if we stop and think about them. Sure, right? And not to pick on Jessica, for example. Well, she didn't really say this. Somebody else said it for her. But this idea of like an eye for an eye, right? Christine said it, right? But everybody, and everybody says that, right? It says it a ton, right? Eye for an eye. I'm a firm believer. You talk to people about death penalty, someone's going to say that at one point or another. But what does that mean? Do we really believe in an eye for an eye? I don't think we do, right? It's not like if you rob $20 from me, I get to rob $20 from you.
You have to be careful with an eye for an eye because you have siblings who kill siblings. So you're never going to want that child, our child, to be killed if your two children happen to kill the other one.
Sure. Right. There's all sorts of weird possibilities when we get into sort of like just retributive justice, straight up. Then things start to get sketchy and wrong and bad, right? And that totally ignores the idea of remembering what prison was for originally, right? We get caught up in this punishment thing, but we forget about the idea of reform, right? People say, oh, they don't deserve to be able to read books and watch TV and whatever, but don't they? Isn't that the whole point? We take them there so that they can learn how to be better, right? As opposed to just, we're going to punish you, punish. And certainly the death penalty, that's all the death penalty is about. Obviously, there's no possibility of reforming somebody whom you've just killed, right? So this idea that we should be doing more gets lost in this idea of an eye for an eye. And we just sort of, well, okay, I know how I feel about that. I can put it on a shelf. I don't have to worry about it anymore. But it's more complicated than that. You have to think about things. And so that's why we have to talk about this stuff. And so, Crystal, go ahead. Not anymore, unfortunately. Just this one. Absolutely. You're welcome to. Not for free. I got to get my filthy lucre. There are other philosophy classes there. I encourage you all to take them. There are really great professors here who teach other stuff. And I've done other classes in the past. I might do them again in the future. But right now I can only do this one. Is that a class? Issues of sexual morality? Yeah. So thank you guys all. I hope it was a good term. I noticed that only like 3 of you did course evaluations. So if you want to do more course evaluations, feel free. I think you all got the link, so you don't have to. It doesn't hurt my feelings. It's up to you. It's up to you. You should have gotten an email that has a link in it. It's one of the school emails. If you just delete everything that the school sends you, then you didn't see it. You're out there. I know you're here. So that's it. You don't have to write any more papers. You're done class. Crystal's going to extend this as long as she possibly can. Okay, well, I'm going to turn this off because it doesn't really matter. It's not a very interesting story. Really? I don't cut anything out. I'm not thinking. It's not live, but I don't have. Yes. Bye. Bye, everybody. Hope you had a good class.